The most powerful man in Seoul looked me in the eyes, in front of a room full of people who could end my life, and said I meant nothing to him. "She's no one," he said. "She means nothing to me." 11 months of hidden mornings. 11 months of promises whispered against my skin, erased in 7 words. But here is what nobody in that room knew. Not his father, not the woman wearing the engagement ring that should have carried my name, not even me, standing there with my heart bleeding out on their white marble floor. By sunrise the next morning, that same man had security teams pulling camera footage from every district in the city. His people were standing in airports, watching train stations, knocking on doors in neighborhoods his family had never once bothered to look at. The most feared name in Seoul was tearing the entire city apart, street by street, hour by hour, looking for me. The woman who meant nothing. My name is Amara, and before you decide whether he was a monster or a man, you need to hear how it really happened. Because I hated him that night. I hated him with everything I had left. And I was wrong about almost all of it. I came to Seoul 3 years ago with 2 suitcases and a design degree, and I built a quiet life doing interiors for people whose money I could not even imagine. That is how I met him. A penthouse project. A client who was never supposed to be home during my site visits, and somehow always was. Jiho. If you know the city, you know the name. The family behind half the towers on the skyline. The family people lower their voices to talk about. The businesses on paper, and the power underneath the paper that nobody says out loud. I did not know any of that when I fell for him. I only knew that a man who commanded rooms full of dangerous people went soft and quiet when it was just the 2 of us. I knew how he memorized the way I took my coffee. I knew he kept my sketches in the drawer of his desk like they were contracts worth millions. For 11 months, I was the safest secret in the most dangerous house in Seoul. Until the night I decided to surprise him. If I had stayed home that night, everything would be different. But I didn't stay home. And what I walked into broke my life in half. Let me take you back to the beginning, because you need to understand what we were before you can understand what was destroyed. The penthouse project lasted 4 months. He was supposed to be a signature on an invoice. Instead, he was there on the second site visit, sleeves rolled, asking me why I had chosen warm brass over chrome. I told him chrome was for people who wanted their homes to look expensive. Brass was for people who wanted their homes to feel alive. He looked at me for a long moment, and something in his face changed, like a door opening in a house that had been sealed for years. He started leaving me coffee on the marble island. My exact order. I never told him my order. The first dinner was in the penthouse because he said restaurants had eyes. I thought it was a rich man being dramatic. I laughed at him. He didn't laugh back. I should have paid attention to that. By the 3rd month, I knew I was in trouble because I had started measuring my days by whether I would see him. He would call at strange hours just to hear about tile samples and fabric swatches, things no man on earth cares about. And he listened like I was reading him classified intelligence. When I finished the penthouse project, he invented 3 more rooms that needed redesigning. There were no rooms. We both knew there were no rooms. Neither of us said it out loud, because saying it out loud would have made it real. And real things in his world get taken away. By the 5th month, he told me he loved me, at 2 in the morning, standing barefoot in the kitchen, and his voice shook when he said it. A man like that. Voice shaking. Over me. I remember pressing my hand flat against his chest and feeling his heart going like he had been running, and thinking, whatever this man is in the daylight, this is who he actually is. This one. The barefoot one. Mine. Before I go further, I want to know something. Tell me where in the world you're watching this from right now. Drop your city or your country in the comments. Because when this happened to me, I felt like the loneliest woman on earth, and I want to see how far this story travels. It matters to me more than you know. Now, here is what I knew about his world, and here is what I chose not to know. I knew there were men in dark suits in the lobby who never smiled. I knew that twice, dinners ended abruptly because of a phone call he took with his back turned and his shoulders like stone. I knew that when I once asked about his family business, the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees, and he said, very quietly, that the less I could answer about him, the safer I would be. I told myself every wealthy family in this city had shadows. I told myself love was enough light. He talked about the future in fragments. When things settle, when my father steps back, when the alliance question is resolved. I didn't know what the alliance question was. I know now. God, do I know now. His mother had died when he was 19. He only spoke about her once, holding a photograph he kept in his desk drawer next to my sketches, and he said something I did not understand until the very end of this story. He said, "My father loved her, and he chose the family anyway." I won't become him. Remember that line. Everything that happens next hangs on it. It was a Thursday in late autumn when my life ended the first time. He had canceled our dinner 2 nights in a row. Family matters, his message said. Short, cold, unlike him. My best friend Dahlia told me to let it breathe. Instead, I did the one thing I had never done in 11 months. I went to the family estate uninvited. I still don't fully know what I was thinking. I had a key card to the private elevator of the penthouse, and I knew from a driver's slip of the tongue that the family was gathering at the main house that night. I told myself I would just see him for 5 minutes. I bought a bottle of wine like a normal girlfriend visiting a normal man. I can almost laugh at that now. Almost. The estate gates were open for arriving cars, catering vans, flowers, a celebration. My stomach turned before my mind caught up. I walked through doors I had no business walking through, past staff too busy to stop me, and into a hall of white marble and glass filled with people in black and gold. And I saw the banners, and I saw the photographs displayed on easels like artwork. Jiho, and a woman I had never seen, an engagement announcement. The room noticed me the way water notices oil. Conversations died in a ripple that spread from the door to the center of the hall, where he stood beside her. Hana. I would learn her name within the minute, because her people said it proudly while they asked, loudly, in front of everyone, who I was and who had let me in. He turned. He saw me. And for 1/2 of 1 second, I watched pure fear cross the face of a man I had never seen afraid of anything. His father moved first, Sun Woo. I had never met him, but I knew him instantly, because power like that doesn't need an introduction. He looked at me the way you look at a stain on a white shirt. Then he looked at his son, and he said, "Do you know this woman?" The hall went so quiet I could hear the candles burning. Jiho looked at me. 11 months of mornings, the shaking voice at 2 a.m., the sketches in the drawer. "She's no one," he said. "She means nothing to me." I don't remember dropping the wine. I remember the sound of it shattering on the marble, and I remember thinking, absurdly, that it would stain and that someone would have to clean it up. Then Hana laughed, a small, polished sound, and said something about staff entering through the service door, and hands were guiding me out, firmly, professionally, the way you remove a problem. The last thing I saw was him not moving, not one step, not one word. The cold outside hit me like water. I made it 2 blocks before my legs stopped working, and I sat down on a curb in a neighborhood of mansions, in my best dress, and I broke. You want to know the cruelest part? My phone lit up while I sat there, his name on the screen. Once, twice, 7 times. and I watched it ring in my hand and I could not make myself answer. Because what could he possibly say that would matter after what he had said in front of everyone? I turned the phone face down on the pavement. If I had answered even one of those calls, this story would be 20 minutes shorter and half as painful. But heartbreak doesn't answer phones. Heartbreak just sits on curbs in the cold and shakes. Here's the part I have to tell you now, even though I did not learn it until much later. You need to know it now because you need to watch the rest of this story knowing what I didn't. 3 hours before that party, in a private office lined with dark wood and old silence, Sun-woo had placed a folder in front of his son. Inside were photographs. My apartment building, my office, the cafe where I bought breakfast. Me crossing a street, laughing at something on my phone, long lens, weeks of surveillance. The rival family had found me first, Hana's family. The alliance being sealed that night was not a business merger. It was a peace treaty ending a quiet war that had already cost both families blood, and I was leverage, sitting in plain sight. Sun-woo's message to his son was simple. The engagement proceeds tonight. If the girl matters, she is a target for the rest of her life. If she is nothing, she is invisible, and invisible people survive. Claim her and paint a target on her back. Deny her and keep her breathing. So when Jiho stood in that hall of glass and marble and said I meant nothing, he was not ending my life. He believed, with everything in him, that he was saving it. I knew none of this. All I had were his 7 words and a broken bottle of wine and a curb in the cold. Dahlia found me because I somehow called her, though I don't remember dialing. She took me to her apartment, wrapped me in a blanket, and let me shake. Around midnight I got sick, and she held my hair, and when it happened again in the morning, she went quiet in a way that best friends go quiet, and she came back from the pharmacy with a small paper bag, and neither of us said anything. 2 lines. I sat on her bathroom floor holding proof that I was carrying the child of a man who had erased me in public 7 hours earlier, in a world where I had just learned people like me were disposable. Something in me went very still and very clear. I was not going to be the secret that got managed. I was not going to raise a child inside a war I didn't understand. I was going to disappear so completely that the city would forget I had ever been in it. We did it in one night. My lease, broken by morning. My phone, dead in a drawer at Dahlia's. My job, resigned by email. A friend of Dahlia's cousin had an empty studio in a port city 3 hours south. Paid in cash, no questions. By the time the sun came up, the woman named Amara, who loved a man named Jiho, no longer had an address, a number, or a trail. I thought I was running from a man who didn't care. I was actually running from the only man in that city who would burn it down to find me. Because here is what happened that same morning, and I have seen the security footage since, and I still cannot watch it without my chest hurting. At 7 a.m., Jiho came to my apartment to tell me everything. The folder, the photographs, the impossible choice. He came to break his father's plan and take the consequences. He found empty rooms and a key card left on the counter. Min-soo, his right hand since they were teenagers, told me later that he had seen Jiho take a bullet graze once and not change expression. But that morning, standing in my empty apartment, he watched his boss come apart like a rope under too much weight. And then the city learned what his name really meant. Camera footage pulled from every district, favors called in that had been saved for a decade. Men in dark suits standing quietly in the airport, at the train stations, at the bus terminals, watching every gate. My photograph, moving through the underside of the city, hand to hand, with 3 words attached. Find her, unharmed. He didn't sleep. Min-soo says he didn't sit down for 2 days. The heir to the most feared family in Seoul stood in a control room lit by screens, scanning faces in gray footage, hour after hour, looking for one woman in a city of 10 million. He went to my office and stood in front of my empty desk. He went to Dahlia's building, and Dahlia, God bless her furious, loyal heart, looked the most dangerous man in the city dead in the eyes and lied to his face. She told him I had flown home. She told him I never wanted to hear his name again. Half of that was true. He didn't believe the other half, and he was right not to, but Dahlia gave him nothing, and he would not let his men press her, because even wrecked and desperate, he would not let his world touch my people. Sunwoo watched all of it and said nothing at first. Then he called his son into the Darkwood office and told him the search was drawing attention, that the alliance was fragile, that a wise man lets small things go. Jiho looked at his father and said, "You let a small thing go once. I grew up watching what it cost you." And he walked out and the search doubled. The woman who meant nothing. If this story has its hooks in you the way living it had its hooks in me, take 1 second and subscribe. That one tap tells me these stories matter to you, and it means the next one finds you. Then come right back, because everything you have heard so far was only the beginning. The real danger hadn't even shown its face yet, because while Jiho was tearing the city apart, someone else was watching him do it. Hana was not a decoration in this story. Understand that now. She had been raised inside her family's power the way Jiho was raised inside his, and she read her fiancé's absence from every engagement obligation, the redirected security teams, the sudden strange energy in the city's underside, and she reached the truth within a week. There was a woman, the woman from the party, and Jiho was not hunting an embarrassment. He was hunting the thing he loved. Then her people found something even Jiho didn't know yet. A pharmacy purchase, a clinic appointment booked in a port city under a name that was almost mine, but not quite. I was pregnant. And now the most dangerous woman in this story knew it before the father did. Hana understood instantly what that child meant. Not scandal, succession. A blood heir outside the alliance. Everything her family had negotiated, everything her future was built on, could be undone by a heartbeat the size of a grape. She did not scream. She did not confront Jiho. That is what makes some people truly frightening. She smiled through a tasting menu with both families that same night, and the next morning she made 2 quiet phone calls. Her family had relationships inside the immigration system. A foreign woman, recently unemployed, recently off her registered address, paperwork suddenly full of irregularities that had not existed a week earlier. No blood, no scandal, just a file moving through a machine, and a woman vanishing into detention and deportation so cleanly that even a man tearing the city apart would be searching for someone who had simply ceased to exist. Let me ask you something, and I want your honest answer in the comments. Hana knew, by then, that Jiho loved someone else. Should she have walked away from the engagement, or was she right to protect the alliance her whole world depended on? Tell me which side you land on, walk away or protect the alliance, because I have read 1,000 opinions on this, and they still split down the middle. While her trap was being built, I was in a small studio by the port, learning how to be nobody. I ate. I slept badly. I found a doctor at a small clinic who called me by my almost name and told me the heartbeat was strong. I walked by the water in the evenings because the sound of it was the only thing that quieted my head. I talked to the little heartbeat like it could hear me. I told it we didn't need him. I lied to it every single day. Some nights I would catch myself composing messages to him in my head. Long ones, furious ones, ones that started with "How could you?" and ended in places I am not proud of. I never sent them. There was no number to send them to anymore. I had burned every bridge so thoroughly that even my own anger had nowhere to go, so it just lived in my chest, next to the grief, next to the heartbeat, 3 tenants in a space built for one. 6 weeks. That is how long I lasted before the past knocked on my door. I opened it expecting the landlord. Instead, I was looking at a man I recognized from a dozen quiet moments in the background of my old life. Minsu, Jiho's shadow. My whole body went cold and I tried to close the door, and he put his hand flat against it, gently, and said the sentence that changed everything. He never betrayed you. He was shown photographs of you 3 hours before that party, and he was told that claiming you would get you killed. I made him say it twice. Then I made him prove it. And he did. He had brought copies of the surveillance photos from Sunwoo's folder. My own life shot through a long lens. My street, my office, my laughing face in a crosshair I had never felt. Min-soo had broken every rule of his position by finding me alone and telling me the truth, and the guilt was all over him. He had stood in that hall during the party. He had watched me be walked out like garbage, knowing everything. I asked him why Jiho hadn't come himself, and he said, because he's watched. Everyone around him is watched. I'm the only one who could get here clean. He wasn't as clean as he thought, remember that. I sat with those photographs for a long time. All the hatred I had built to survive was standing on a foundation that had just turned to sand. He hadn't abandoned me. He had performed the cruelest sentence of my life to keep me breathing, and then he had torn the city apart trying to take it back. I said yes. 1 meeting. Neutral ground, a quiet hotel in the port city 3 days later. Min-soo left to arrange it, and for the first time in 6 weeks I slept through the night. I want to stop here and be honest with you, because I know some of you are ahead of me already, and you are shouting at your screen. You are right to shout. Min-soo was followed, every step from the moment he left Seoul. Hana's people had been watching Jiho's inner circle for exactly this, and Min-soo, the loyal one, the guilty one, the careful one, had walked them straight to my door. The meeting I said yes to, the reunion I let myself hope for, was the closing of a trap around me and my unborn child. Does that make your blood boil? It should. Because I did everything right. I disappeared. I asked for nothing. I protected my child. And a woman who had never once spoken to me decided that my existence was an inconvenience to her paperwork. If that puts fire in your chest, put it in the comments, because 6 years later it still puts fire in mine. The morning of the meeting, I wore the only nice dress I had taken with me. I remember my hands shaking as I locked the studio door. I made it exactly 100 meters. 2 cars, 4 officials with real badges and false paperwork. Words like irregularity and status violation and mandatory processing. I told them I was pregnant. One of them looked genuinely sorry, and that was somehow the most frightening part, because it meant the machine was real and it did not care. They let me keep my phone for 1 hour during intake. 1 hour. I used it to call the only number I had memorized instead of saved. Dahlia. I told her everything in 90 seconds. The truth about the party, Min-soo, the meeting, the badges. And then the line went dead because my hour was up, and I went into the system and the door closed. I want to tell you what those days inside were actually like, because I think people imagine drama, and the truth is worse. The truth is gray walls and fluorescent light, and forms with my name spelled 3 different ways. The truth is asking when I could see a doctor and being told it was being processed. Everything was always being processed. I was a file now. Files don't have heartbeats. Files don't have 2 heartbeats. I kept one hand on my stomach almost constantly, like my palm could stand guard, and at night I whispered to my daughter that her father was the most powerful man in the city, and that once upon a time he had torn it apart looking for us, and that maybe, if the world had any mercy left, he would do it one more time. I didn't know that at that exact moment he already was. Dahlia did the bravest thing anyone did in this entire story. A girl with no power, no money, and no protection walked into the lobby of the most feared family building in Seoul, refused to leave, and demanded to speak to Jiho by name. They should have thrown her out. Instead, word traveled upstairs, because by then everyone in that building knew the name Amara. Min-soo confessed everything in front of Jiho and Sunwoo in the same hour Dahlia arrived. The secret visit, the truth-telling, the tale he never saw. Jiho went silent in a way Min-soo said was worse than any rage, and then the pieces snapped together. The detention, the timing, the port city. And then Dahlia's information landed like a match on all of it. The pregnancy. Min-soo told me later that Jiho had to hold the edge of the desk. A child, his child, in detention, inside a system controlled by the family he was scheduled to bind himself to in 4 days, at a signing ceremony in front of both houses and half the city's press. And here is the crisis, the place where every road led through fire. Move against Hana's family openly, and the war reignites. The war his denial of me had been the price of preventing, and people die, maybe including me, inside a facility his enemies controlled. Sign the alliance, and I disappear quietly forever. His child born into detention and deported into nowhere. Go to his father and risk Sunwoo choosing the empire again, the way he had chosen it over Jiho's mother a lifetime ago. 3 doors, all of them burning. What Jiho chose next is the reason I am able to tell you this story. Before I tell you what he did, I want your prediction in the comments right now. Pause if you need to. What would you have done in his position? And what do you think he actually did? Lock in your answer. Almost nobody guesses this part correctly, and I love reading the ones who do. The signing ceremony. 4 days later. A grand hall, white marble and glass. Both families in formal black gold accents. Cameras from every major outlet, because this alliance was a public monument to peace between 2 empires. Hana stood beside Jiho in the deep gold of her family's house. Sunwoo stood at the head of the room. The documents waited on a table between the 2 houses like a border on a map. Jiho stepped up to the table. He picked up the pen. The room held its breath, in that satisfied way rooms do when everything is going according to plan. Then he set the pen down and he said, "Before I sign, both houses should know what they are signing next to." He nodded once. Screens along the hall came alive. Surveillance logs, payment records, the falsified immigration file with its edit history exposed, timestamps and authorizations tracing straight up into Hana's family. Photographs of me, pregnant, being taken from a street by officials whose badges were real and whose orders were bought. Minsu and Dahlia had spent 4 sleepless days pulling that evidence out of the machine, and Jiho spent it in front of the entire hierarchy of both families. Because here is what I learned about that world. It runs on old codes underneath the money. And the oldest code of all is that the innocent are not touched. No wives, no children, no civilians. Hana's family had ordered the abduction of an unarmed pregnant woman to protect a signature, and Jiho proved it in public, in front of every elder whose respect their power depended on. The hall did not erupt. It did something worse. It went cold. Elders of Hana's own house turned to look at her father. Alliances inside the family cracked in real time, in silence, on camera. Hana stood very still, and I am told her face never moved, and part of me respects that even now. Then Sunwoo did the thing no one predicted. The man who had chosen empire over love once before, the man who built the trap that started all of this, walked slowly to his son's side, in front of both houses and said, "My family does not sign alliances written in the blood of innocence. The girl will be returned unharmed today, or there is no peace, and you will not survive the war." Father and son, side by side, the empire choosing love, 30 years too late for Jiho's mother, exactly on time for me. I knew none of this. I was sitting in a gray room in a detention facility, one hand on my stomach, when the door opened and a supervisor with a very pale face said my paperwork had been reviewed and found to be entirely in error, and that a car was waiting. The car door opened, and there he was. Not the boss, not the heir, just a man who had not slept in 4 days, standing in the cold with his hands shaking, looking at me like I was the only real thing in the world. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. Then he said, "You were never nothing. You were the only real thing I ever had." And I watched the most feared man in Seoul break down crying in a detention center parking lot. And I put his hand on my stomach, and I told him, "Then come meet the second one." I wish you could have seen his face. I carry it with me everywhere. The aftermath settled the way these things settle in that world, quietly, permanently. The alliance was renegotiated, with Hana's family stripped of standing, her father answering to his own elders for breaking the code. Hana herself left for Europe within the month. I heard she runs her family's interests there now, far from Seoul, and I have decided that is enough justice for me. Min-soo was not punished. Jiho told him in front of the family that the only man who told Amara the truth would never answer for it. Dahlia became something like a legend in that building. To this day, security greets her by name. And Sunwoo? The hardest ice thaws slowest. But I have watched that man sit on a white marble floor he once considered sacred, letting his granddaughter stack blocks against his knee, holding one of her tiny shoes in his hand like it was the most valuable contract he ever signed. He told me once, only once, that he had spent 30 years believing love was the weakness of powerful men. He said his granddaughter took that belief apart in an afternoon. We married the following spring, small, private, glass walls, soft light, no banners, no easels, no performance. Dahlia held my flowers, Min-soo held the rings. My daughter arrived that winter, screaming with authority, and her father, the man who commands rooms full of dangerous people, is entirely, hopelessly, permanently outranked. If this story moved something in you, share it with one person who needs reminding that the truth behind someone's cruelest moment is sometimes the opposite of what it looks like. Just one person. Stories like mine survive by being passed hand to hand, the same way my photograph once was, except this time in the light. Sometimes on quiet evenings, I stand at the glass wall of the penthouse and look out at the city that was once torn apart looking for me, and I think about those 7 words. She's no one. She means nothing to me. The biggest lie ever told in that hall of marble and gold. He spent everything he had proving it wrong, and he proves it wrong still, every ordinary morning, with coffee made exactly the way I take it. So now I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, if you had been standing in my shoes on that white marble floor, hearing those 7 words, could you ever have forgiven him after learning the truth? Or was the damage already done? There is no wrong answer. There is only your answer. And I will be down in the comments reading every single one. Thank you for staying with me until the end of my story.